or go home.
That's it.
Let's close that off. Close that off. Right, we are live on YouTube for the first time during the US session. Welcome to everyone. Now, I don't have a screen share.
Perfect timing, mate. I just hit TP1 on Euro Aussie.
Well done. Well done. Well, we'll check that out in a second. Let's give everybody this screen for right now. Here we go. Right, we should be.
You look like you're traveling okay there. Oh, that's gold. Okay,
that's gold. Yeah, that's gold. Let's have a look how. Let's have a look how we are traveling on the FTSE. It's got a little bit stuck, but it looks okay right now. We did come down and touch the weekly pivot in the end, which was actually pretty good for kind of confirming. Almost got there on the hourly. You can see on the 4 hourly, it looked like it touched it absolutely, but didn't quite get there with this one. But it looks pretty good. You know, the market's holding up pretty well at this stage. So those trades are still on. If you did what I did, then I added to it as it came down. So that was the idea of only putting on some of the trades, you know, at the higher end, just in case it took off without us. And then as it came back, then we can add a little bit more, which I added at around about the 5,500 level, just as it came down here. So we are aggregates of. So we're just in profit now on that one. It's 55.22 is the kind of profit line right now. So from here now is where the trade is in profit. So we'll have to just see now if it does start to push up. So there certainly were some people involved in this one from the gun. Hi Ravinder, hi John, and hey Kumar. So we had a few people involved in this one. Now the US session does need to take us forward here, and maybe it's unlikely that we see really the direction of travel until the US session now, which is why this is such an important session to trade through. But we can start managing it because it has come down and just started to give us a higher high here with a higher low here. So the stop is currently around about 23 pips under the weekly pivot, but we can start moving it up to around about 10 pips under the weekly pivot, and then, you know, see how far we get to. The monthly pivot is the target, and all I'll be doing is waiting for dips to move stops, which I will be moving, you know, and it might be on the hourly charts. It depends what the trend looks like. Now, this is really key. If we really start to go and it's looking like we're going to get up to this point by the end of today, then it's likely that we're going to be creating some sort of 15-minute trend. And I'll be looking at the 15 for my placements in stops, because it's about velocity, and it's about velocity, and about the pace of the market. So if the market starts to move up at a pretty fast pace, I'll go down to a shorter time frame and look for the swings on the shorter time frame. So I'm still going to use the same strategy effectively with coming out the trade, where I'll be going, you know, just under the swings, and I'll move stops if it gets through. So if it breaks through, then I move stops from here to here. It comes down and goes again. When it breaks through there, then I'll move stops from there to there. And as I say, it's going to be dependent on how fast this moves. If it moves slowly, then we'll just check it every few hours. If it starts to move fast, then I'll be checking it on the 15. So that's the idea with this one, mate. Hopefully that's fairly clear. Thank you, Helen.
I think it's clear.
Helen's just wishing us congratulations.
On our first show. Thank you. Well,
yes.
I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think so too. So that's where we're at now. Now, Jeff has just taken profit on the Euro Aussie. So should we check that out?
We can have a look at that. There's a little bit going on. I hope you guys are watching the Telegram channel. And if you're not, we need to provide you a link for that. I'll just share screen. So if you're not in the Telegram channel, it's free. If you're not in that Telegram channel, guys, you need to be. to get some of these trades before we're on air and management while we're on air. Euro Aussie actually wasn't one. This is one that I took on Friday or maybe Thursday night. I can't remember. I was trading this bar here. And this is one of my little classic slingshot scenarios. Actually, I think I tried this trade on the Euro on a 30-minute chart on Thursday, first candle of London session, and it failed beautifully, if there's such a thing. And proved my point that trading the first 30-minute candle UK session is doesn't work.
Foolhardy.
Just look, not for my strategy. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I proved it again on Thursday. But fortunately, we realised the risk involved there and went in very, very short in terms of risk. But we did take, and that was what I call the double cross, guys. And we'll share that with you now. It's not a secret in any way, shape, or form. When you get a crossover of the pivots, it doesn't matter if they're daily, weekly, or monthly, or whatever they are, depending on the time frame that you're trading. And this was on the 4-hour chart. Once we get a break and a decisive break, and this is a decisive break of the pivots, followed by a decisive bar that does exactly the opposite to the previous, that's my signal to go. And when we're in a downtrend, that just adds weight to the theory. So we got into that one. We've taken profit, just taken profit now, actually, pretty much near the bottom of this bar. And hopefully that'll go on and do the job for us. There is a big reward on offer here if we can actually find the momentum in this particular trade. It's got to get through.
We discussed this, didn't we, mate? We discussed the Euro Aussie, and the thing is, when it comes down to this, I actually quite like the Euro Aussie for a longer term trade. Like I'm potentially talking a month or a few out, because we're seeing China get back into production, and that should help the Australian dollar. And Europe has been hit, probably the hardest continent that's been hit so far with the coronavirus. So you would kind of assume that with monetary measures in place with the euro, that those weaker economies are really going to fundamentally suffer. I've got a sneaking suspicion that that there's going to be another raise of issues in the Eurozone. I think that's going to rear its ugly head again. As I said, I've been talking about the Greece issue that we had a few years ago. I wonder whether we might get back to something similar with some of these economies. If Italy was already in trouble, Spain was just getting itself back together, and then this hits. Does that put pressure on the structure of the European Union? That's my thinking with that. So I really like the Euro Aussie for potentially a real long-term trade with this.
Yeah, look, it's coming off a very good place for me as well. The top of this channel is always a place that I'm looking to trade short from. That didn't look like it was going to happen towards the end of last month. It just fired up here and then sucked back like the water coming in from a tsunami, basically, or the water going back before it comes in from a tsunami. That kind of threw me a little bit, but I did like the fact that we got a nice little doji sitting there. And I know people don't necessarily like dojis. I love them. I actually think they're fantastic. And that bar there convinced me that this was now all I needed was a test of something. And we got that, as I said, on Friday, on Thursday rather, on Friday morning, we were able to trade it. So that one's going okay. Now, this was the Telegram group one that I put in earlier, guys. If you were paying attention, you would have heard me say last week that rarely have I seen a tweezer top as prominent as was this one on Pound Aussie. And all I was waiting for was a lower high. And we got the lower high on the daily chart right here. Now, it's not, a lot of people wouldn't even consider trading that bar, but once I see this followed by that, and by that I mean a rejection of the previous high, basically. So
could you blow your charts up a bit, Jeff?
Blow it up.
Yeah, if that's okay, just so we can see that in a bit more detail?
We recognized and knew that this was a very strong level that we were coming off. It's even got form way beyond that point. As you can see over here, it's been a very strong support level, strong resistance level here, and false break here, forced it back down after it retested that level, and that's exactly what I'm looking for again. The tricky part was the descending trend line, and we've been watching this for a long time, waiting for this to show us exactly what it wanted to do. Look, I'm not yet convinced that it's going to go a long way down, but I'm almost, I am confident that we can find our way back to the trend line. And if we find our way back to the trend line, we've got a decent trade on our hands. And then if we get back underneath it, happy days. We can see this turn right around and go a fairly long way. Much will depend on probably what the RBA says tomorrow. RBA announcements, of course, is the first Tuesday of the month, and that is tomorrow. I assume that that's predicted to be nothing. Hang on, I'm just having a look at that. April 7th.
Yeah, I'm just checking out Forex Factory now as well.
Yeah, no change predicted there, because the RBA did say last time that this is likely to be the last cut. This is as low as we're prepared to go. So if they're true to their word, and I've got no reason to think they won't be, you shouldn't see a cut on the Aussie tomorrow. Depend entirely on what they do say as to the reaction that the market will have to that, I would suspect. So pound Aussie, we did get into that one. Hopefully that can do something for us. I haven't taken any profit on that yet, so that's still at risk. A lot more to talk about, Ash. We're going to go through the pound trade. Should we do that now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Now, guys, you'll notice that this is a completely different platform to the one, those of you who tune into the UK session, this is a completely different platform because this is my analysis platform. And this is the trade that we took this morning on pound US dollar. It is a breakout trade, and we're seeking to catch the breakout of the last 3 bars prior to London session.
We will cover that again, Crystal, in a second. Crystal's just asking about the double cross again, but we'll cover that again in a moment.
Sure. Okay, so we got in on the 9 o'clock, well, not on the 9 o'clock bar, after the 9 o'clock bar closes. So that's the bar that we're looking to count backwards on. Today it was that bar there. And what we do then, once we've identified that bar, and obviously if you're in front of the charts at the time, you don't need to identify it because it's just closed. Now, what we're seeking to do is trade the breakout of the range of the previous 3 bars. And that today was this bar, and this bar. So we set a short order, 10 pips underneath this bar, which is around about here somewhere. And we set a long order, 15 pips above this bar here, which was the high of the range. That's the low of the range of the last 3 bars, right? So did that. We got triggered by this big bar here. And then as soon as we get triggered, we cancel the opposite order. So in this case, cancel the short. And pardon me, we'll let the long run on a 15-minute chart. So once you get triggered, you've got to switch to a 15-minute chart straight away. And once you've done that, you then trail 2 buying bars. So the candle that took us in was this one on the 15-minute chart. We then wait for 2 buying bars before we trail our stop loss. So we only got 1 buying bar here. And then we started to turn around, another buying bar here. Then a selling bar. Now we've got 2 buying bars in the row. That's exactly what we're looking for. So we move our stop at that point to that level there, bearing in mind we got taken in at this level. So we've just gone into profit at that point. And that's as good as it got today, unfortunately, because the next little sequence took us out, took our trailing stop out. So we made SFA, Sweet Fanny Adams, on that trade today, but at least it was positive, I suppose. Now, when we get a little bit of a chance, we're going to show you how to journal that. And those of you who aren't keeping journals yet, would strongly be advised to do so, and we'll show you how to do that. I'm not sure if we'll do that in the second half hour. We'll try and settle this one down first and get a good look at what this US session is going to look like from today's point of view, and of course going into the future when hopefully you guys will be able to join us each and every US session open, and we can look to today is not a great example because A is Monday, B there's not a lot of news hanging around outside of the Canada news coming up, but that's in what, hour and a half or something like that, so that's not going to affect this session for us. But what we can do, of course, is show you the trades that we're in and the trades that we're likely to take in the next day or so. Probably won't be looking to trade too much on the small time frames today. I think the market's a little bit up and down for me, but
Yeah,
you
it
never know.
is.
You never know. We will go through and have a look. Hi, Faye. Ash, that's kind of the pound trade. I think what we'll do going into the future is look for a breakout in the first candle of US session as well. I've never done that. Good.
Yeah,
I've never
we'll
done
try
that
it out
before, but we'll try and identify something that we can trade as a breakout bar on the US session.
Okay,
mate, well, I've got that much to look at, but
do you want to just quickly first? You want to quickly cover the double cross one more time?
Oh, the double cross. Sorry. Okay, so the double cross. Let me give you the best case scenario to trade a double cross. Screen blur. Screen blur.
The screen's blurry. Shouldn't be. Let me just double check something.
Might be glasses. It shouldn't. No, it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't.
Can everybody see the screen clearly? Okay. Can you Jeff? Can you just check something? Was my screen blurred, or is that for both Jeff and I, or is it just Jeff's screen for you? It's all right for me. I have to say, I'm on YouTube and it seems pretty clear, but
yeah, same. Maybe it's the speed of your internet connection. I don't know.
It's crystal clear. Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, this fine. It might be your end then, Crystal, if the screen's a bit blurred. Fine. Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate that. All right. Well,
okay. Double cross.
Do you want to have double cross? Yeah. Double cross. Yes.
Okay. What are we on here? EuroCAD. Let's see if we can find a double cross here. There's one. There's one right there. So trend is not that important, but if it does line up with trend, then you've probably got a far better chance of it converting. So what I'm really looking for is a decisive bar that breaks a pivot. Now, in this case, you've got the weekly pivot, right? So I'm looking for a decisive bar that breaks it and then a decisive bar that re-breaks it in the opposite direction. In this case, you've got a nice little inside bar sitting there, and your entry would go there, your stop loss would go there, and because I've got a structure in place, the structure being the rectangle, I'd certainly be taking a bunch off the table as soon as I hit that low. So that's what I'm looking for. It gets a bit messy here if you've got bars that aren't decisive, and that's why I like them to be decisive. So you've got a lot of tails sitting here. So whilst that does look like a double cross, it really isn't. It's not a tradable commodity anyway. There's one there. Would have hurt you, this one, because you've got a break of the daily pivot, almost of the weekly pivot, then you've got to reply straight away. Depends how this candle was formed. It looks like maybe it went up before it went down, in which case you'd be okay. But it also looks like a news bar, so you could have got yourself into a bit of strife there had you traded that. But if you see the double cross I'm talking about, cross the daily pivot, almost the weekly pivot as well, then the next bar comes back and crosses it again. That's what I'm looking for. You've got to pick your poison, though. It's not just trade that. You've got to have a few more reasons to do so. As with anything, you know, don't trade a candle pattern sitting out there on its own. Don't trade any one single thing. You've got to have something else to give you the belief. that this can actually transgress into a profitable trade. Why would I think that one would? Well, we've come off the top of this range and we've put in a lower high. So I'm more than happy to trade that short. And that's exactly, you know, the whole structure of trading is not about one scenario. It's about layers. It's about saying, okay, we've got a double top here. Let's trade the next lower high. That's fine if everything else works out. You just can't isolate a candle pattern that I've just shown you and say, righto, let's go. Because it doesn't work that way. You've got to have good reason. But, you know, if you see that and it suits the other scenarios, the other circumstances that you've got in front of you, then, yeah, I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Double cross.
There we go, mate. Well, and we'll get to, you know, the double cross, I'm sure, as time goes on.
Yeah, favourites, and you'll be seeing me trade that a fair bit.
Yeah. It's a really good thing to start recognizing. I think, you know, for right now, everybody just train your eye at watching those pivots cross. You know, when the pivots cross, then you know that might be just a little alert for you to kind of get interested in. So just look out for something like that. So we are. Let me just show you the FTSE, unless you got anything else right now, Jeff.
Not right now, mate. But I've got a lot to look at in the next half hour.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, let's just watch the watch this session. Let me just bring this on here.
And of course, we will show you the chart. The what do you call those things? I love filling in. Journal.
The journal, yes, very important. Everybody starts to get into a journal, and as this show progresses as well, we'll probably focus a bit more on the journal. It's one of those that I think between the UK show and this show, we will have some quieter sessions to spend some time on you know, getting everybody's house in order, which is going to be about journaling. It really will be a huge difference between how successful you can be if you start journaling things.
Yeah, it'll blow you away, really will.
Yeah, and there's ways, you know, it's not just documenting that the whole. One of the points, I was going to say the whole point. One of the points is of the journal is the analytical aspect that you can overlay after you have all the information in your journal, and that's what we're really trying to do with the journal. It's not just about you know, noting down the trades. It's also about how can we then utilize the information that's in that journal to help us progress. And again, you know, Microsoft Excel has got ways that you can effectively write. You know, you can put in your own graphs. So when you start to do that, you're also analyzing charts to do with your performance, as well as analyzing charts to do with price action and everything else. So it becomes really useful. So I would certainly advocate the use of a journal. So this is where we are with the FTSE. We probably have to take out this trend line. We did take it out initially, and as price started to close underneath it, then it, at this particular point, it's adding some downward pressure, but very, very short-term downward pressure. So we do need to take this one out. The only time that we really are going to be flipping positions, and this is the thing about the stop, you know, there's different ways you can place your stop. Now, one of the important things to do with a stop is having a look at your ATR, your average true range, to see how much the market is moving in its current environment, to know if you've got your stop in a sensible place. But the other thing is, we also want to start to ascertain, where does the trend actually change? And if it closes under this weekly pivot, then the suggestion from that point is that we're in a downtrend. But the situation's all about the challenge comes with whipsawing, you know, because price can come down here and then all of a sudden start to close just a little bit higher, just like this particular point here would have been our breakout level. And as price came down, it went beyond the breakout level, but ended up closing back above the breakout level, which is a fairly bullish signal. You know, so where this bar would look bearish because of, and I'm hoping that these are big enough. I'm just going to have a look. It should be. If anybody's struggling to see the size of this bar, then I'll blow it out. In fact, I can blow it up anyway. This one here. This bar gives us a lot of information. Even though it's a bearish looking bar, at the end, it tells us quite a lot about the motivation of the bulls to keep the trend intact. So where we're picking out certain levels, like here, along here, that's our breakout level. That level becomes a point of interest. And really what we want to see is how is price reacting around this point of interest? And as price falls and falls and falls and falls and goes beyond and goes beyond and goes beyond, then just before the hour is done, it's back above, holding the point of interest, closing above the point of interest, suggesting that the buyers are still motivated. So even though this bar is red, we wouldn't take this as a selling bar. If I was looking at this and happy to trade this price, then I'd be happy to buy at this point because price has managed to close back above. So the bars themselves, red or green, aren't the significant aspect. It's where they end up closing and what they can tell us about the motivation in the market. Are the buyers still in control of the whole structure? And the structure of this is that there's some resistance and we break through resistance here. So the structure is still bullish. And while this closes above, the structure is still bullish. So the bar itself just gives us a bit of an indication. Now, what we've got going on right now is a little bit of to in and fro in, and for this trend to continue, we do need to take out these highs. But while the price is above this point and not closing below, above really, well, let's say the weekly pivot, but while it's above really this particular area, but the weekly pivot and not closing below the weekly pivot, then we are still going to be heading for upside. So that's the way that I would utilize this for getting a directional bias. And then after that, it's just about how you can get the best possible price. But if you can get your directional bias right, then you'll be in pretty good hands, because
it makes life easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, because you can be a bit loose on entry. The entry really is the least important aspect of direction. If you're thinking direction over entry price, direction is key. The thing about your entry price that you need to get right is to not put your account under so much stress for where your stop's going to be, because otherwise you're going to see, price continue to come down and down and down, put you under stress, you close the trade, then all of a sudden it goes in your direction. So that's why the stop placement's really important, is the direction and the bar and entry ends up being quite important, because the direction really only gives you half the story. Nobody wants to see their account drawing down. So that can put you under psychological stress. So it's important to try and get decent timing. But if you've got your directional bias right, it actually can improve your timing after you see some of the information form like this kind of particular bar. So we are looking right now for upside. No reason to change our view on that. Your stop should be keeping you protected anyway. And we are going to just watch to see what happens on the US Open and see if the directional bias continues. There's no reason for us to change the directional bias, and at this stage we are not wrong of the direction of travel, but we may end up being wrong. It just depends. Markets can turn around in a heartbeat currently, so things could change. Now we don't know whether it's going to get to this monthly pivot, but that looks like a pretty good target to me. But there is this one here. Now I wanted to see whether there is if there's a pattern here. Oh yes, there is, isn't there? We got this. So this is a descending triangle. Now, targets, really, we want them to be soft targets. So if it gets to that point, I don't want to close the trade. What I want to do is seeing if it can go further, because looking at this pattern with this descending triangle, it's suggesting if we measure from the highest point of the triangle to the baseline, that gives us an assumed measured move. Now, this is very subjective because triangles can be drawn in so many different ways. That looks around about right. There might be a different pattern here that I haven't picked up on, which is another reason it can be subjective. But this suggests that if this breaks out here and holds over a 4-hour time period, then we could actually be looking, you know, around about the 6,000 level. We could be looking in this area here for this to play out. Now that doesn't mean it's going to go straight up and not stop. Very unlikely. It still means that the likelihood is that we still pop ourselves up. We probably will see that the monthly pivot, or maybe this slightly lower area, and come back down again and test something else before we have another look at the monthly pivot, and then possibly go beyond. But you know, you can get caught in a range at any particular point of the direction of travel. So the direction is up. We need to manage our stops correctly, and we don't want, what we don't want to see is this turn into a box, effectively some sort of box instead, and then come all the way back down, get through these lows, and we haven't taken anything. So what we want to do at this stage is take something off the table, or shift those stops up a bit tighter. If we take something off the table, we can be a bit looser with our stops, but at least get to break even, and then see if we can actually ride a wave, you know, a little bit higher at this point, maybe even close the gap. We don't really know. So so the first aspect of it is getting the right is getting the trade underway. You know, this could turn around and we could be well and truly wrong. Right, US market has just opened up. Let's have a look at this on a 5-minute chart to see what the motivation is early on. Now on a 5-minute chart, there's a little trend line that is rolling along here. So we want to see, make sure it doesn't get down to that particular point. On a 5-minute chart, that 55.81 on the 5 will be the initial target. So it could you know, again, freeze at that point, but we want to see if we can take that level out. Just checking through the other markets. This is the S&P 500 right now. Looks a little bit negative. I don't like to see the S&P negative when I've bought the FTSE, because ultimately now we're in the US session. We want the US markets to go up, and all boats tend to rise when the tide is going up. So I want to check around the US markets. This is the Dow. Let's put this on a slightly longer time frame. That's the Dow. If we look at the Dow and check it on an hourly chart, also got some room to the monthly pivot. Looks like the monthly pivot's going to create some genuine resistance on the Dow as well. So either way, this looks like a potential correction, reversal, whatever you want to see, you know, point, if we get there. So we've got to get there first. But if we do, that looks like a pretty obvious place for things to genuinely come back and either test the level and go, or change direction completely. So we want to make sure that that area coincides with where we are with the FTSE, and it's looking at this point that the likelihood may well be that that all of these reach their monthly pivot around about the same time. If they haven't, check the US markets out for this, for when it hits that monthly pivot, and if the FTSE's on a level of resistance, could be price resistance, then it's again got another chance, a pretty good chance that that's going to come and reverse or test a lower level. So got to be right on top of these with everything else. SPY is green. That's great. Okay, so the SPY is green. That's up about 0.8%, which is good. Things can change fairly quickly in the market. What we want to see mainly is price to hold, because the longer price holds, the more likelihood of it being able to ease its way up. You know, it's when we see some genuine reversal signs and signals early doors that things start to get a bit more concerning. But so far things are holding. No huge explosion to the upside. I'm just going to let you know what the situation is with the FTSE 100 shares, mate, and then you can do your thing, because I presume you must have bars as well.
Roger D. Yep.
Okay, so FTSE 100, currently we are looking at, check out some of these names as well. Yeah, slightly worse than earlier on, but still pretty good. 83% of stocks are in positive territory. Looking at Legal General, an outperformer at 16% to the upside, coming from a low base, but still a huge climb. Rolls-Royce as well, doing pretty well at 16%. Then we have some building stocks. EasyJet, Carnival, I think quite notably higher at 13%. So some of those travel stocks are doing pretty well. And interestingly, building stocks, Taylor Wimpey, Persimmon, and Barratt Homes, all some of the outperformers. So it looks like a fairly solid session for some of those travel stocks so far on the FTSE. Intercontinental Hotels also doing really well. The stocks that aren't performing down the bottom are actually, interestingly, there's some of the defensive names. United Utility, Rentokil. So BP not doing so well today as well, but it had a fairly decent move to the upside after all the stuff that was going on with WTI, which we will also quickly check on, and then I'll pass.
Yeah, we were expecting an oil trading expert in the room to take us through WTI, and hopefully that will still be the case. The link has been sent to him, so hopefully we'll catch up with him in the not too distant future.
WTI looks good at the weekly pivot. So check out WTI around about 25.70, because that's the area that the buyers will be challenged. And if they don't come in at that point, then we might well be hitting the lows and beyond with WTI. So look for WTI around about the weekly pivot. What's the price action saying? Let it go for an hour. Does it come down and then come and close above? And if it does, that's going to be a fairly good signal for WTI that maybe we are starting to hold some price levels. Doesn't mean we're exploding up. Just means that there's enough motivation to keep price at least where it is. But easing back right now, mate, on WTI. So the initial bluster is cleared somewhat.
Okie dokie, happy days.
Right, let me pass to you, mate, so you can get to your candles and your bars.
Sure. Des, I posted the link into the chat there, and it seems now to be gone. Did you get it? I can't see it in the chat. Can you see the link in the chat?
Well, we're not allowed to post in there, are we? Or YouTube seems to
that's why it disappeared.
Yeah.
It was there. I actually had it there. So it went in, but yeah they catch up with you very quickly.
They're on top of it, YouTube.
Don't they?
No dummies, they are.
And the PB might get another dirty letter. I don't know. Sorry, mate.
Yeah,
I'll apologise in advance. I'll have my phone ringing in the morning.
Yeah.
All right. Where am I going to take you guys? There's a whole lot to look at, I've got to say. I think as I go, I'll just give you an idea as to what I'm looking for on a general basis rather than... Oh, something happening there. Not to the charts, to my screen, sorry. So those of you who are familiar with the way I trade, I only trade currency. So Ash has just been talking foreign language in the last 5 or so minutes to me, and that gives me a chance to do something else, of course. But what I'm primarily looking for is on currencies only, market structures. So I call a market structure things like rectangles that you see on your screen right now, things like longer term scenarios on, let me pick one, euro dollar. Where's euro dollar? It'll be way down the back here somewhere. Why? And I'll explain that to you in a sec. Long-term structures like this on euro dollar, where we've been following this channel for the longest time, and guess what? We're still inside that channel, and it's still being, both the top and the bottom are still being recognized, and that's why I like to follow them, because once I recognize a structure, it just keeps on keeping on, and it gives you lots of opportunities to trade off the top and bottom. I call that a range. So if you hear me mention ranges, they're not just box ranges like this one here. They could be anything. They could be a rectangle, could be a triangle, could be a channel. It's a range to me. Why is it a range to me? Because, well, it's locked. It's got price locked inside this area here. So once we get to the bottom, we head to the top. Once we get to the top, we head to the bottom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're very, very important things to me. And that's what I'm looking to trade from every single time I go into the market, pretty much. So you'll find that on pretty much every chart that I'm about to show you, there will be a structure of some kind. And on this one, EuroCAD, it is pretty clearly to me a box range. And we have broken out of that box range once to the high side, twice to the high side, both false breaks to underneath support, and now potentially another false break. And that's exactly what I'm looking to trade, right? So once we get back into the range, I'm then looking for a retest of the bottom of it or a higher low once we get into there. Just like we've come off the top here, I'm looking for a lower high, right? And once I see the lower high, that's where I like to find a trade. And as you can see on that occasion, worked out perfectly. It does very, very often, and that's why I love to trade that particular method of trading. So it doesn't need to be a rectangle. It can be any shape. I haven't tried a circle yet, but no reason to think.
Diamond, you ever tried a diamond?
I haven't tried it, no. Probably only because it hasn't got that shape on the bloody chart. Otherwise I would.
Oh yeah, I've got a diamond on my footsie. I'll show you that later. Yeah.
All right, happy days. So it's pretty clear now what I'm looking for. Well, it should be pretty clear what I'm looking for. I'm looking for price to get back inside the range. And once it does, then I can act. So right now, I've got absolutely nothing to do. I won't trade at a support level short. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. That would be a gamble, in my humble opinion. Yes, it can happen. And if I were to pluck a number out of the air, I'd probably give you something like 20 to 30% of the time that happens. And I'm probably being generous. As you can see, most breakouts don't work. They're false. So I'm looking to trade them, looking to trade false breaks at the end of the day. So once I see that scenario there, I can just move on to the next one because I know there's not going to be a trade there anytime soon. This one, however, Euro Yen, if I go a little bit wider onto the monthly chart, you can see that the overall market structure is confused as far as I'm concerned. But at the end of the day, we're in a downtrend because we've got a massive descending trend line here. We've also come back underneath the rally trend, if you like, which is this one here. Is probably being retested, actually. So I'll be looking at something like that. And as you can see, that has been retested right at the top of my rectangle there. So I'm more than happy to stay in that box range until it proves different. And proving different would be break, retest, gone. But until that happens, I'm still looking for price to come back into here, which it has done. So false break, false break, false break here. I'm now looking for a higher low. Significant higher low here does get me interested in trading to the high side. I really like to see the daily pivot retested today and that higher low be formed in that vicinity. If I see that, then that's exactly what I'll look to trade. Look, there are many, many times and probably throughout any given trading day that isn't affected by coronavirus or isn't affected by something that's absolutely out of the box. Then you'll see me trading on the 30-minute charts to pick that up. So if I think the market's coming down to here to go long, I'll look to trade it down to there in order to get that long. So I can be short-term bearish, medium-term bullish at the same time. Absolutely no qualms with that. But at the moment, with the market being so volatile, I don't think that's a great method of trading right now. So I'm really not looking to do that. I'm more looking on the 4-hour plus time frames because I think there's a little bit more room.
That's really my thoughts of the FTSE as well, mate. I'm very short-term bullish, but ultimately I'm a bear on this market.
Yeah, I think Ash and I are very similar in that regard. If we do see a bias and it is not agreeing with the momentum, if you like, then we'll trade the momentum to pick up the bias. And I guess that's exactly what we're saying. So, I'm a bull here until I'm proven wrong. And proven wrong is, as I said before, we break here, retest and go short. That hasn't happened. It hasn't happened anytime soon or in the recent past. So why would I think that's about to happen now? I wouldn't. So I'm looking for that higher low. I prefer it off a support level, of course. And that's kind of where it all comes together. CAD Swiss. Now, we put my group into this trade last Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember when. We traded, which bar? That one, I think. Oh, no, it was that one. We traded that bar there. Don't ask me why, guys. It's a complex one, this one, and it'll take me a half hour to explain why. But there is a scenario there that I do like, and we did trade this long. I actually closed this trade on Saturday morning, and that early this morning looked to have been a very good decision, but it's now fighting back. But you can see, again, I've got a structure here. So I'm looking to trade off the bottom, higher low to the top. As soon as it gets to the top or breaks out, I'm looking for it to come back in, etc., etc. So that's the daily chart. 4-hour chart at the moment is showing us that structure very, very clearly and what that structure means to me. So again, bounce off the bottom, higher low, away we go up to the top. It's this formula is never changing. It's always the same for me. So that's what I'm looking for now. I'm either looking for it to come off the top and give me a lower high, or break out and then come back inside at some stage. If it goes long, then it shouldn't come back in here, and it should come back and retest the top of that range. Then I've got the opportunity to trade it long. But no trade there at the moment. Look, there is the trade here right now on euro pound if you want to take it. The 4-hour candles have closed. You would have to go in here at very small risk. As you can see, I'm already in. Oh, sorry, I was in this trade. I closed it on Saturday morning as well. They're actually not trades. That's where I was depicting where I got in and had a very good run on this one. But it's set up again to a degree. Now, similar to the double.
This one fascinates me, mate. But being a pound man and Europe being our close neighbour, I'm always fascinated by this particular cross.
Well, I think we've got another chance to get in here, Ash. And it's based on pretty much exactly what I just described as false break. So false break up here, right? You're looking for a re-entry back into the range and then a lower high. Guess what candle I got in on, guys, to trade that short? You got it, that one. So that's the lower high. So entry here, stop loss here, and I got out on Saturday morning. And again, that looked to be a good decision, but we've come back into the party. This is exactly the same thing. This is a range top, if you like. It's a trend line. I treat it exactly the same way, but we've come back underneath it and we've retested it. Hasn't really given us a significant lower high, I've got to say that, but it's the same scenario. Back in, retest, away you go. Back in, retest, away you go. So that's what I'll be looking to trade here. I would much have preferred that this was a double cross. So had this candle here closed above the daily pivot, I'd be pretty confident that I've got a good trade on my hands here. Because the candle is not decisive and bullish and hasn't crossed the daily pivot, it's still got false break written all over it for me. We've got to bounce off the weekly pivot as well, break the daily, retest the daily. If I don't trade that in some fashion, given that I've got a bearish outlook, then if price gets down here, I'll kick myself in the Khyber. So I've actually got to take that trade. Ash was talking about this in the UK session earlier, where I will scale into this. So I'll be looking to trade very small risk here in the first instance, because I'm trading straight into support, also trading straight into DS1. So there's a level there that's going to give a shape or form. What we have to guard against, of course, is it doesn't take our stop. But I am going to use the tighter stop rather than put it up here in the obvious place, because I think we can sneak some profit if we do it that way. And I'll just go a little bit tighter to show you what I mean by that. So we've got this support level here that I'm talking about. If we take the smaller risk in terms of the size, pip wise, we can take profit here, which will probably give us about 3/4 or at least 1/2 to 1 before we get profit in the bank. That's fine. I haven't got a problem with that. Then if it does go short, as we anticipate it will, then everything below there's going to be jam and we've got no risk on the table. So that's exactly what I will do. Now, the caveat on this will be if price actually goes through here now and takes out where our stop would be before triggering us into the trade, I will reassess. But whilst ever we're still, this is still I'll call it a high. In other words, this one doesn't take it out. I think we'll be in the money here. I think we've got a good strong chance. So I will place the order. And it will be, as I said, at very small risk. I'll just use this. This is a 50K account, I think. We'll call it 1/4%, for want of a better word. I haven't worked out my risk based on this account size, but that'll do for now. So it's going to be a sell stop. We will sell at the bottom of that bar, rounded down. So the bottom of the bar is 87,644. We'll call it 87,63, shall we? We'll just call it 87,63. It gives us 1.5 pips breathing space in case the broker wants to get a little bit greedy. And our stop loss will be about 5 pips above the high. So let's call it 88.01. 88.01 will be our stop loss. And that will be the trade that we're looking for. Shell stop 87.63 with a 38 pip stop loss. Okay, so now we work out what our TP1 is going to be. And I'll go a little bit tighter so I can show you how I do that. I'm just simply going to use that line that I've put on my chart, which is the support level, right? It's a little bit before the tail lows, but it's a little bit under DS1. So that's going to be our highest risk factor on this trade. The level is 87.43. So that becomes our first take profit level if you are following this trade or want to follow this trade. And as I said, if you do, you need to scale into this. In other words, you need to go in light. And then once we get through this level and maybe retest it, once you're trading for free or virtually no risk, that's when you want to be scaling in. Okay. So load up a little bit more once that happens. Again,
yep.
If the high gets taken out here, we'll reassess that then. A couple more. CAD yen. Again, I've got a structure here. This one's a little bit more complex. And if you're really keen and you can spot what was almost the case here, and this is where it gets interesting when you're a trader, isn't it? Because it gives you about 65% of what you really want. And then you make a decision based on, oh, do I really want to trade? Is this really a setup? Is it not? Blah, 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 blah. So it depends on what your poison is, of course, and your aversion to risk. And I'm fairly risk averse, I've got to say. I'm no big trophy hunter. But I see two things here. You can see we've got a little range, a little box range that's got a couple of lows here, a few highs here. We had a false break. Now we've come not to the bottom of that, but we've gone, I suppose, 2/3 of the way down and found a little support level. That could be key. In the meantime, we've come back inside the bigger range, which is that range there. So in the world of the longer, the stronger, you probably have to take note of what's happening in the big picture. So the big picture is telling me that we've snuck back inside that range, and the daily chart is probably the one that I'm looking at more than anything. It's also got a double bottom sitting here in a higher low. The issue is these pivots at the moment. That's what's holding price up. So really what I would like to have seen is the candle that we're seeing here on the daily chart, a close above the pivots which is the monthly pivot in this case, and then a retest of that. So all of that comes together to me and says this is going long. Do I trust that candle is the question. Well, I've got another little system that tells me, no, I don't. And the reason I don't is because I'm at a level known as DR2, and I'll be entering the market at DR3. That's a no-go zone for me. And I won't do it today, but in one of our sessions, I'll give you an indication as to why I don't trade in that area. It's just a no-go zone for me. It's trying to rewrite history, really, at the end of the day. Long story, as I said, and for that reason, it's kind of what I want, but it's not exactly what I want. So I've got to say no to that one. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know, you're not going to catch every move. I think that's about it, mate. There are a few more little scenarios that I'm looking at, but the market structures that I wanted to take a look at today are pretty much those. Aussie CAD's another one. Beautiful little market structure there. We bounced off the bottom. We're really stuck amongst these pivots, though. Not sure what happens here. I suspect we're going to go into a bit of a range in a horizontal level, so I'm steering clear of that one. But there's plenty to look at. One little trade that we've put you into there. Hopefully that triggers and gets us some money. But that's about it for me at the moment.
Brilliant. Okay, mate. Well, we might time may well be our enemy when it comes down to doing the journal, because I want to show you the FTSE as we stand right now. And as we stand, we are attempting to get right back to the high. So we want to see whether this can go up and beyond. But just looking across the board, if we kind of check out some of the other markets, it's the S&P really that's the most impressive. Very, very strong looking opening half an hour on the S&P 500 right now. Let's see what happens, but it's certainly getting sucked into this monthly pivot. So keep your eye on that as you've got your FTSE trade on. Keep your eye on the S&P for the monthly pivot, because that's likely to reverse things, and the FTSE 100 will be very, very susceptible to the S&P, Dow, and less so NASDAQ as the session goes forward, because the effectively the US session will start to take precedent. So this is the area that I'd like to see before any major action is taken. But certainly for right now, the FTSE is attempting to get back, and you know, maybe it doesn't see the monthly pivot in the same time frame as the S&P and Dow. Certainly, it looks like those particular markets have got a much stronger level of momentum than the FTSE has at this current time, but you never know what's going to happen. But at least we are facing in the same direction as our trade is going right now. It did respect the 5-minute trend line. Almost, actually. It didn't quite come down and touch it, but it is respecting. You know, we're talking about market structure, and market structures on every single time frame. On the 5-minute time frame, it looks like it's managing to respect this this trend line. So if this trend line continues to hold and be bounced off, then we can start to use this for some stop placement as well. And the reason that I'm quite keen to move stops, I suppose relatively early, is that my longer term view on this market is that it comes down. So I don't want to get caught in a trade in a direction that I don't have a longer term belief in. And the coronavirus scenario in Italy and Spain seems to be better than it was. You know, this is the first weekend where we actually saw a reduction in numbers, and the market is effectively responding in kind to that. But you know, when it comes down to it, some of the unemployment figures out of the States and some of the other data points as well have been really grim. So to suggest this market is going to go higher and all of a sudden we're back to normal and we're back in a bull run, I think would be foolhardy. So I'm still looking for downside, but while we're moving up short term, then I'm quite happy to trade in that particular direction and build into the short in a slightly higher area. But it's looking pretty good, mate. So that's the situation with the FTSE. As I say, just one more time with the S&P, looking really strong with the S&P, really focused on that monthly pivot. Let's see what happens with that. See what happens with price action. Now, be very, very careful not to get too trigger happy when you start getting into profit. The last thing you want to do is miss a really good run to the upside. at this particular point, all you are trying to do is protect your trade. The first, really the first step of any trade is not to try and make money, because if it was, you're going to make very, very small amounts. You know, every time it tips into profit and you start taking the trades off, you're hardly going to make anything. So the first point of call is get your trade safe. Whether you take profits and keep the stops in the same area on another portion, or whether you slide stops up, doesn't really matter. What's really important, what's the most important right now, is that we have a free trade to be enjoying. So that's the first point of call. And if or when, or let's say if and when the market does get up here, still, you know, don't be taking all your well, let's say don't. My idea would be not to take off your full amount of the trade here, because it could still go beyond. It really depends how the story is developing, because right now the market seems to love the story that it's hearing. And you just don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. And the best way to take advantage of a positive developing story is just manage the point that the market may come back to change the polarity of the story, to change the sentiment of the story. You know, how does it express a change in the sentiment? They're the points that you want to be putting stops at, and they're the points that we want to be flipping our ideas and positions. But let the market go, because trends can last a long time, and it'd be such a shame to miss a decent move. And at the end of the day, the market's pretty low down here. You know, when we kind of like look at this on longer term timeframes, the market is in an incredibly low point. So this really could go anywhere. But still come down ultimately, in my opinion. But it could go anywhere and still fall. So we don't want to just, you know, get to a small point at the start of the range if there's all this on offer. So trade sensibly and give yourself some room to decide as well. That's the other main thing. Give yourself some time. Okay, mate. Well, we better push off. I've got a few other things I need to get to as well, but we better push off. I'm hoping that this first show was of use to everybody and everybody enjoyed it, and it's helped you spend an hour while you're maybe cooped up indoors.
Yeah, where'd that go? Where'd that hour go, man?
I know it's going to go fast. It's going to go fast, but we will get to journaling at some point during the show. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in the UK session. Maybe in this. We'll try and always do it in this, but we'll as time goes on, we'll have probably a much better handle on how we can allocate certain parts of the day as well.
Yeah, I think it was important to give these guys an idea of how we do trade. So yeah, I'm not disappointed that we've spent so much time doing that. To answer your questions is going to take too long, guys, and we apologise for that. Indicators, Fed, no, I don't use indicators at all. The only thing you'll see on my chart are pivots, trend lines, and structures, like I showed you just earlier. And Lewis circles, I'll work on that.
Thank you so much for your messages, guys. Really kind of you as well to appreciate what we're doing.
Indeed, thank you.
And equally, we appreciate you being here and getting involved with us as well. So thank you as well.
Absolutely. And enjoy the rest of your Monday, guys, and have a great trading week.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll see you tomorrow, Jeff. Same show time, same channel at 5 to 8 in the morning for the UK session.
That's the dates. Don't be late. See you guys.